Welcome to Bill Knows Best. Today we're traveling to the world of ancient maps, where oceans were filled with monsters, and the edges of the world were marked with the phrase, "Here be monsters." Medieval maps weren't just travel guides. Sometimes they looked like the sketchbook of a terrified artist. But why? Why did these sailors and cartographers decide to fill the oceans with bizarre creatures instead of fish and waves? Did they truly believe monsters lived there? Or was it just a medieval joke? Let's find out together. First, let's remember that medieval maps weren't just for navigation. These maps were more like storybooks, where science, religion, and imagination blended together. Cartographers loved illustrating thrilling and terrifying tales to entertain their readers. For example, if you go here, a giant dragon will eat you. If you take this route, a 10-headed sea monster is waiting for you. In other words, these maps were a kind of survival guide, albeit with some exaggeration. Fear of the unknown. In the Middle Ages, most of the world was unexplored. People didn't know what lay beyond the oceans, and when we don't know something, our minds start crafting scary stories. For instance, why is the water so dark here? There must be monsters. Why has no one returned from this area? They must have been eaten by strange creatures. This fear of the unknown led cartographers to fill every uncharted territory with monsters. In other words, monsters symbolized danger zones, places you'd better avoid. Religion and mythology. In medieval times, religion played a huge role in people's lives. Many of these monsters were inspired by religious and mythological legends. For example, dragons, symbols of the devil and evil forces. Sea monsters, representations of God's wrath and nature's dangers. Cartographers used these creatures to remind people that the world was full of peril, and only faith in God could save them. Medieval marketing. Even back then, marketing existed. Cartographers knew that adding monsters to maps made them more appealing. For example, buy this map to know where the monsters live. With this map, you can avoid the dangers of the oceans. In other words, monsters were a kind of selling point, something like Call of Duty skins. Now the question is, were these monsters real? Probably not. Most were inspired by sailors' tales and local legends. In a time before the internet, cartographers didn't have Google Maps. Some spent their days waiting at ports for ships returning from long voyages, each with wild stories to tell, like, near an island with tall mountains, I saw a giant, strange fish. Okay, that's one monster. I saw a weird wave, but it looked like a dragon. Okay, another monster discovered. Another fascinating aspect is how culture influenced maps and monsters. European maps, full of krakens, giant octopuses, and Ziphius, a whale with a horse's head. Chinese maps, packed with blue dragons. Scandinavian maps, featuring Jormungandr, a massive sea serpent coiled around the earth. Some medieval maps are particularly famous. Hereford Mappa Mundi, covered in bizarre creatures from dragons to dog-faced humans. Carta Marina, swarming with sea monsters ready to swallow ships whole. These maps aren't just beautiful, they're windows into the medieval mind. We realize that back then people feared giant squids eating sailors more than tax collectors. Medieval maps symbolize humanity's fear of the unknown, a fear that still lingers today. Even now we're afraid of many things. For example, Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes mysteriously vanish, or areas rumored to be full of aliens. And new monsters keep appearing, like zones with no internet where Facebook doesn't work. What monsters would you add to modern maps? If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe and drop a comment.
Oh my God, you subscribed?
This is the greatest moment in the history of YouTube.